Back in the day, I first crossed paths with Ethan at a rowdy student bar right on campus, where the air buzzed with laughter and lively conversations. I had seen him before. He was the kind of guy who hovered at the edges of the crowd, giving off that strong, silent vibe. In groups, he never really took charge of the chatter, instead chiming in with thoughtful responses, his calm and confident manner showing he was genuinely engaged. He came across as someone who was polite and genuinely caring, a rare listener in a world full of noise. But when he was by himself, Ethan seemed different. He'd sit there quietly, deep in thought, with a serious look that hinted at some hidden sadness. It was like he carried around a secret story he wasn't ready to share. Yet, the moment someone approached him, he'd change. The mystery around him would only grow, and I found myself more and more curious to uncover what lay beneath the surface. Then came that one pivotal day when the bar was packed, every table taken. I finally gathered enough nerve to ask if I could sit with him. To my surprise, he answered with a playful yet somewhat formal tone, saying it would be an honor to have me join him, though I had a feeling he meant it sincerely. As we talked, I saw a spark of joy light up in him. Even though my jokes weren't the greatest, they made him laugh genuinely, and we fell into an easy, warm conversation, creating our own little bubble of connection in the midst of all the noise. Before I knew it, time had flown by, and he mentioned he had to get to class. As he got up to leave, I couldn't resist telling him how much I enjoyed our chat. "Me too," he said, a smile lingering as he walked away, leaving me eagerly looking forward to our next encounter. He was undeniably charming. 4 days later, fate brought him back to the same spot, and I worked up the courage to see if there was room for me at his side once again. To my delight, he welcomed me with a yes. In that moment, I felt an intense need to protect him, even if it meant stepping outside my comfort zone. As we picked up our conversation, I noticed the laughter between us came more naturally this time. His smile brightened the space around us, and I realized I was falling for him faster than I had anticipated. After a few more chance encounters, I started to wonder if he'd ever work up the nerve to ask me out, so I decided to take the leap myself. "Hey, Ethan," I began, trying to sound casual. "I just got a couple of tickets to a concert. Want to come with me?" His response threw me off. "Don't you have a boyfriend to take you?" It was like he was looking for a way out. "Look, if you're not interested, that's cool," I replied, a bit surprised by his reaction. "But I have to say I'm surprised a sweet girl like you doesn't have a boyfriend." I leaned in a little closer, trying to read his reaction. "Come on, you know I'm good company." He chuckled, and I teased a bit more. "So tell me, just how good am I?" His grin got wider. "You're gorgeous, smart, and incredibly quick-witted. That's what I love most about you." I secretly hoped for a bit more passion in his words. I could see the flush rise in his cheeks, and a wave of embarrassment seemed to hit him unexpectedly. "Julie, you really push me out of my comfort zone. I find you incredibly attractive, but I want what we have to be more than just surface level." He paused, searching for the right words. "I want to really get to know you, but not in a, shallow way." Despite the awkwardness in the air, I could tell Ethan was genuinely excited. "I'd love to go to the concert with you," he said, with a warm smile. The night turned out to be amazing. The music vibrated through the crowd, and we both soaked up the moment. Afterward, we walked back to campus, laughter lingering in the night air. When I hugged him goodbye, my heart raced. But to my disappointment, his lips didn't meet mine. Not even for a simple peck on the cheek. A wave of doubt washed over me. Was I not attractive enough? Weeks passed, filled with our regular meetups, yet uncertainty still gnawed at me. "Ethan, do you even like me?" I finally asked, my heart pounding as the words left my mouth. "Of course I like you a lot," he replied. But his answer felt incomplete, like something important was missing. "Then why haven't you asked me out on a real date?" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I want to, but it feels like we're walking a path that could lead to something serious, like marriage. And if that's not where we're headed, then what's the point?" "Thanks for meeting with me," he said, his tone sincere. Before Julie and I start this next chapter, I felt it was important to have this conversation. To me, dating isn't something casual. It's a step towards marriage, but only if everything lines up just right. How things will unfold between Julie and me is something I'm eager to see. But there's one more thing I need to mention. I've decided that I don't want to have children with my future wife. I know it's a deeply personal choice, and I don't want to go into all the reasons today. I understand that the idea of grandchildren is something many parents cherish, and if that's a deal breaker for you, I completely respect that, and will step back from my relationship with Julie. When he finished speaking, there was a brief silence before my father responded. He acknowledged that while I'm an adult capable of making my own decisions, he appreciated Ethan's respect in discussing this with them. He mentioned that he had no objections to Ethan and me dating, though he couldn't speak for my mother. Then my father added, "I want Julie to choose her own path based on her feelings. The idea of grandchildren is wonderful, but her happiness is what truly matters." With those words, he gave me his blessing. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Ethan thanked my parents and stepped off the porch. I hugged him tightly, feeling a mix of relief and excitement as we embarked on this new journey together. Taken aback by his seriousness, I blinked. "What do you mean by that?" He sighed, his expression growing more intense. "Before I can seriously date someone, I need two things. First, I need to meet her parents and get their approval. Second, I have to be upfront about not wanting kids. Do your best. My future depends on it." Those words hung in the air, laden with significance. I felt this was just the start of a deeper conversation that we were destined to have. Think carefully about what I've just said. If you're on board, let's set up a time for me to meet your parents. But remember, even if we take this step and start dating, it doesn't mean we're automatically heading towards marriage. I want you to know that I won't be making any moves until that meeting happens. Honestly, I was left speechless. My previous boyfriends had always shied away from the idea of meeting my parents. The whole no kids conversation was usually something to be pushed off to some distant, uncertain future. Back then, I wasn't even looking for anything serious. But then Ethan showed up, and he completely changed my perspective on relationships. When I called my parents to tell them he wanted to meet them, I could hear the confusion in their voices as they tried to figure out just how serious this was. True to form, Dad jumped straight to asking if I was pregnant, while Mom was already mentally planning the wedding. I quickly told them to tone down their excitement and not to mess things up by getting ahead of themselves. The evening finally came when Ethan was set to meet my parents. During a casual conversation, he confidently steered things toward the heart of the matter. He flashed a smile that seemed to light up the room, and I felt my heart flutter. It was in that moment that our love story truly began. From that night on, Ethan knew exactly how to win me over with his words and actions. Our dates were filled with laughter and sparks, and as our kisses grew deeper and our touches more tender, we still maintained boundaries that kept us from crossing into full intimacy. For a year, we were completely devoted to one another, and I felt like we had settled into a comfortable rhythm. It was a wonderful place to be, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just treading water. One evening, with my heart racing, I decided to speak up. "Ethan," I began, "I love you. If you really feel the same, then how do you see our future together?" He looked into my eyes with sincerity and said, "Julie, I love you more than I can even put into words. I think it's time we start talking about the future, about marriage." His words took me by surprise. "Oh, Ethan, you're full of surprises. If you want to know my answer, all you have to do is ask." He smiled. "All right then, I'm asking, Julie Harper, will you marry me?" My mind raced as I took in the seriousness of the moment. After a brief pause, I finally said, "Yes, I will." We tied the knot not long after graduating from college, choosing to keep the wedding simple to stay within our budget. Before long, we both landed promising jobs, and when it came to our intimate life, Ethan was nothing short of incredible. He had a way of setting the mood and building anticipation that made every moment together electric. He shattered all my expectations, revealing a boldness I never would have guessed from the seemingly shy guy I thought he was. Ethan never talked much about his past relationships, and we had a silent understanding not to delve into each other's histories. But one thing that stood out was how he contributed around the house. He was always eager to take on chores, and often checked in to make sure he was pulling his weight. My cooking skills were met with endless compliments, and my ability to keep our home in order while also ensuring our intimate life was equally impressive made my female friends green with envy. Our home was alive with communication, affection, passion, and laughter. To save money, we opted for cozy nights at home instead of going out, playing board and card games that brought out our competitive sides. Every Friday night became a treasured ritual of an old DVD, popcorn, and snuggles on the couch. But what truly surprised me was Ethan's playful side. He turned out to be a master of teasing and pranks. I always thought of myself as quick-witted, but he was right there with me, turning our home into a playground of laughter and mischief. It felt like we were celebrating April Fool's Day at least once a month, and I can't help but smile now as I remember all the clever pranks we pulled off together. Nearly 3 years had passed since our wedding, and life took an unexpected turn that shook me to my core. A serious event loomed over me, filling me with dread at the thought of possibly losing my husband. Despite faithfully taking my birth control pills, fate had other plans. I found out I was pregnant. A visit to the doctor confirmed my worst fears, and the weight of this revelation felt unbearable. The idea of telling Ethan paralyzed me with fear. Desperate to keep our bond intact, I buried the secret deep within. But morning sickness soon made it impossible to hide. One morning, noticing my distress, he gently asked what was wrong. In that moment, I couldn't hold back any longer. I stammered, "I'm pregnant. I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down my face, each one carrying a mix of joy and terror. Ethan's face remained calm, a mask of composure that only intensified my anxiety. After what felt like an eternity, he finally said, "Let's take a breath and talk about this later." It took several minutes for me to gather my thoughts, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. When I was finally ready, he asked the question that had been hanging in the air. "What do you really want?" With a trembling breath, I answered, "Ethan, I want to have this baby. But if you feel differently, I'm prepared to honor the promise we made to live without children. I could consider adoption, but I just can't bring myself to have an abortion. The future feels uncertain, and I can only hope that our love will guide us through this uncharted territory. The power to decide our future is in your hands. Whether we embrace parenthood or choose adoption, my heart sincerely hopes that we keep our child. Julie, I believe, like you, that every life is precious, and your desire to keep the baby deeply touches me. It's a testament to the love we share in our marriage. I want you to know that I will support you, just as you've always supported me. I realize that for our family's future, I may need to make sacrifices, including stepping away from my previous role. Your happiness means the world to me, and I fully support your decision to keep this child. I promise to be the best father I can be. You will never hear a word of regret from me." Overcome with emotion, I threw myself into his arms, tears of joy streaming down my face. After Emma was born, she was nothing short of a miracle, radiant and perfect. Ethan kept the promise he made to me, and I couldn't have asked for a more devoted father for our daughter. Just a year later, he surprised me in a way I never saw coming. "I've been thinking," he said one day. "I never thought it was a good idea to grow up as an only child. So when the idea came up, I was intrigued. How about giving her a sibling in a year or so?" It seemed like the perfect plan. I could take some time off from work and focus on being a mother for a while. And as for Ethan, he mentioned he would get a vasectomy after the second child was born. I was stunned by how sure he was. All I could manage to say was, "Okay." Before I knew it, Grace was born. I left my job for a few years, diving headfirst into the joys and challenges of motherhood, and eventually returned to my previous work. During this time, I noticed no issues between Ethan and his parents. However, this didn't mean I didn't have my suspicions about him. Sometimes I felt that something was off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Even back in college, I'd seen him sitting alone, lost in thought, with a faraway look in his eyes. At times, this seriousness would overwhelm him, bringing him to tears. He was everything one could wish for in a husband, kind, supportive, and loving. Yet deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was keeping something from me, from our marriage, and from our family. It seemed as though he wasn't fully ready to embrace his role as my husband and the father of our daughters, but I still counted my blessings, as I had more cherished memories of our marriage than many of my friends. Now that both of our daughters were happily married, I found myself contemplating a new chapter in life as an empty nester. I couldn't help but reminisce about the thrilling dates and sparks that defined the early days of our relationship. That first year of marriage felt like we were living in a blissful bubble, spending most weekends barely leaving the comfort of our bedroom. But as the years passed, the demands of raising 2 kids, managing careers, and juggling bills gradually drained the excitement we once had, like a balloon slowly losing its air. I often longed for those carefree times when it was just the 2 of us, laughing and enjoying each other's company. Now, with our children grown and gone, I was left searching for a new purpose, feeling a void that had once been filled by our roles as parents. How was I supposed to fill that emptiness now? The thought of an affair briefly crossed my mind, especially with the attention I still received from some undeniably charming men. Even at my age, I found that I still attracted interest. Some of these men seemed to find my marriage more alluring than off-putting. There were fleeting moments when the right man, in the right situation, made me wonder if I could stray without Ethan ever finding out. But I always stopped short, content to flirt with the idea, rather than actually crossing the line. We often joked about having our little office romance, calling each other office wife and office husband. When I noticed that Ethan intrigued me, I would often steal glances at him when he wasn't looking. Sometimes I'd catch him staring off into the distance, his features clouded with a shadow of sadness. I would gently ask if something was bothering him, but he always brushed it off with a simple, nothing. Deep down, though, I felt there was more to it. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was carrying some unspoken sorrow from his past, a burden he wasn't ready to share. It left me feeling helpless. Then one day, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. What we were missing the most was laughter. Our days had once been filled with it. Ethan had a way of making me laugh, and I loved returning the favor. My laugh was one of those memorable snorts. When I caught my breath during it, I sounded like a piglet. That ridiculous sound would send us both into fits of giggles, often leaving us in tears from laughing so hard. For years, we kept that playful spirit alive, teasing each other as the kids grew up. But lately, it felt like that joy was slipping away. I realized it was time to rekindle the laughter that had once brightened our days. We used to believe we had to be the role models our children could look up to. As spring approached, I realized it was the perfect time to inject some excitement back into our lives with a few surprises. Spring was just around the corner, and who knows, maybe it would bring new life into our marriage. In the weeks leading up to April Fool's Day, I threw myself into planning a grand prank, while also dropping hints about a new guy at the office who had all the women swooning. I couldn't resist boasting about Nicholas and his electrifying dance moves at the office party, which, unfortunately, Ethan couldn't attend. To add some spice to my routine, I started working late more often and hosting weekly girls' nights. When I came home, I'd take a long, refreshing shower to wash away the day's stress before heading to bed. But our intimacy began to fade. I found myself slowly pulling away from physical closeness with Ethan, coming up with excuses to keep him at arm's length. I became increasingly critical of his efforts around the house, often complaining that I had to redo his chores because they just weren't up to my standards. It turned into a game. I would burn dinner or serve it undercooked, and he would express his growing frustration. And yet, he remained silent, simmering beneath the surface. Finally, when April rolled around, a mix of nerves and excitement bubbled up inside me. As the clock struck 6 in the evening, the doorbell rang. "Ethan, could you get that? It's probably for you," I called out, a sly smile tugging at my lips. "Seriously, Julie? You're just in the next room," he replied, his exhaustion plain in his voice. "I'm tired," he muttered, and I couldn't help but feel a thrill from the chaos that was about to unfold. Come on. It wouldn't kill you to do something nice for me just this once, I teased, trying to nudge him along. Reluctantly, Ethan headed to the door, completely unaware of the surprise waiting on the other side. Standing there was a woman about our age, holding a mysterious package, her eyes cast down, a posture I hadn't expected from a delivery person. Ethan cleared his throat as he approached her. "Hi, can I help you?" "Are you Ethan Reynolds?" she asked, still avoiding his gaze. "Yeah, that's me," he replied, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. "Can you show me some ID?" With a mix of curiosity and anticipation, he pulled out his wallet and showed her his driver's license. I could hardly contain my excitement. The real drama was about to begin. "Did you go to high school in Texas?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Her question caught me off guard. It seemed completely out of place. "Well, yeah. Why do you ask?" Ethan responded, his tone filled with confusion. "Do you remember a girl named Emily Carter?" The room suddenly felt thick with tension. I found myself getting up, instinctively drawn to the scene unfolding before me. Ethan's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Yeah, we knew each other, but she's dead." Unspoken words lingered heavy in the air as the woman finally looked up and met his gaze. "I have something difficult to tell you. She did pass away years ago, but then," with a surge of energy that made my heart race, she declared, "I'm alive, Ethan. I'm here, and more alive than ever." Ethan stared at her, disbelief written all over his face as the weight of her words sank in. His eyes reflected pure shock, and I feared he might collapse on the spot. "Oh my God, is it really you?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "But your parents told me you were dead. They said you died because of me." "It was all a lie," she confessed, her voice trembling. "They just didn't want you to come looking for me." In an instant, he pulled her close, their bodies crashing together in a desperate embrace. Their kiss was so intense it felt like the world around them disappeared. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Please come inside before I have a heart attack," I stammered, barely containing my own emotions. They moved to the couch, sitting down like two love-struck teenagers, fingers intertwined and giggling, their laughter filling the room. I suddenly felt like a ghost in my own home, and anger surged within me. I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Excuse me, you two. Ethan, what the hell is going on? Who is this woman, and why are you practically all over her?" "Julie, this is Emily Carter, my first and only true love," he said, his voice a blend of joy and sorrow. "The one I never mentioned because it hurt too much to remember. I thought she was gone forever. Her being here feels like a miracle." "Your only true love?" I echoed, the words hanging in the air like an unwelcome specter. "I'm sorry, but who am I?" Let me take you back to a time when everything felt alive with energy and endless possibilities. In high school, Emily and I were caught up in a whirlwind of passion, completely consumed by our love for each other. We were certain we'd get married right after graduation and build a beautiful life together. But there was a dark cloud hanging over us: her parents. They were strict conservatives and saw me as nothing more than a reckless fling for their daughter. Our love had to be kept secret, hidden from everyone. Under the cover of night, Emily would sneak out, and our late-night meetings were filled with an exhilarating sense of rebellion. Each stolen moment only made the thrill of our intimacy more intoxicating, drawing us closer and closer. Then, one day, we let our guard down and made a reckless choice that changed everything. Emily got pregnant. Our dreams of running away and starting a life together started to take shape, but they clashed hard with reality. At her age, Emily couldn't sign a marriage license without her parents' consent. We hoped that her pregnancy and our love would convince them, but when she finally found the courage to tell them, it was like a dam broke. They took her away, shattering our dreams, and I was left alone with a broken heart and a desperate hope for a future that suddenly felt impossible. Up until that point, I didn't know anything about her fate. A few months after they took her away, her parents reached out with devastating news. Emily had passed away, overwhelmed by the shame of giving birth to an illegitimate child. Tragically, the child died with her. Ethan's heart shattered as he listened, tears streaming down his face as he turned toward Emily in agony. What happened to our child? Did you have an abortion? He asked, his voice trembling with fear. Not exactly, she replied, her voice heavy with regret. I couldn't go through with it, and my parents wouldn't allow it either. Everyone was told that my husband died in the line of duty, but the truth is our son is alive and thriving. He's grown up now, and he's a man in his own right, both a husband and a father. A bitter pride flickered in her eyes. He has my intelligence and your athletic build. I hope you'll get to meet him soon. He was eager to meet you when I told him about you after my parents' funeral. Driven by a mixture of shock and curiosity, Ethan asked, "What is his name?" A thoughtful smile spread across her lips. I wanted to name him after you when he was born, but my parents wouldn't allow it. Until recently, he was just Marcus, but now, with his enthusiastic blessing, he's officially become Ethan Jr. Tears flowed down Ethan's face like a child who had just lost his most cherished possession. I struggled to contain my disbelief. Is this really happening? Someone pinch me. I can't make sense of this whirlwind. I spoke up, but doubt gnawed at me. Ethan, this has gone on long enough. We need to ask this woman to leave our home, and we need to do it now. We have some serious matters to discuss, just the two of us. I had never seen such fierce determination on Ethan's face before. No way. I lost Emily once. I won't let it happen again. I sat there, frozen in bewilderment, as Ethan's questions poured out in a rush. What happened to you after they took you away? The weight of my past hung heavy in the air as I recalled the ultimatum my parents had given me. Leave with them or lose their support forever. I was just a pregnant teenager, adrift in a stormy sea with no lifeline except my family. Life dealt me a harsh blow, leaving me unable to support myself, let alone a child. The pain of being separated from you was unbearable, but I felt trapped. I made a pact with them to stay away, a promise made to keep our child from being taken away for adoption. For 40 years, I endured a nightmare, longing for our son. I can't imagine how I survived. My thoughts often turned dark, thinking of ways to escape this life. I constantly fought the urge to reach out to you, but the fear of losing Marcus kept me silent. They kept a tight grip on me, monitoring my every move, cutting me off from the outside world. No phone, no money of my own, no communication unless they were right there with me. It was suffocating. I was even regularly subjected to lie detector tests, interrogated about any attempts to contact you. 3 months ago, everything changed when my parents died in a car accident. In that moment of despair, a glimmer of hope ignited within me. A hope to see you again. Something I had buried deep inside for so long. Ethan, over the past few months, I've been gathering information about you bit by bit, driven by an unquenchable longing. When I found out you were married, a wave of doubt overwhelmed me. I hesitated, afraid that I might disrupt your happiness. But the thought of finally reuniting with you pushed me forward. I didn't reveal the truth directly, but instead, I watched you and your home, trying to gauge the state of your marriage. I must admit, deep down, I secretly hoped you weren't happy in it. Then, out of nowhere, a young woman approached my car and asked if I knew where Ethan Reynolds lived. I pointed to your house, and she muttered, "Damn it, I can't stand getting bad news." Disappointment clear in her voice. Your wife has filed for divorce. At that moment, it felt like a sign from the universe, as if everything had aligned in a way I never dared to dream. I had an urge to slip her a small bribe, whispering that if your wife left you, maybe I could revive our chance together. What happened next caught me completely off guard. She handed you a package. "Ethan, you've been served," she said, as you took it, a puzzled expression crossing your face. Panic washed over me, and I shouted, "Please don't open it. It's a joke. Just ignore it." But as you began reading the document, I saw the anger growing within you. If it weren't for Emily showing up just in time, that scrap of divorce paper would have shattered my heart. "Ethan, how could you be so cruel?" you exclaimed, disbelief evident in your voice. But now, I felt a strange sense of relief. I no longer felt any guilt about Emily and me. Ethan turned to her, taking her hands in his, and in that moment, everything changed. "I beg you, tell me you're not married," Ethan asked, his voice filled with a mix of hope and fear. "Of course not," she replied, their eyes locking with such sincerity that my heart raced. "I've never been with another man." "Does it upset you that I got married?" I recoiled, realizing the absurdity of the situation. "You thought I was dead. You had every reason to move on. I can't blame you for that," she said, her voice steady but layered with unspoken emotions. And then, in a moment that felt both surreal and electrifying, Ethan said, "Emily Carter, will you marry me?" My reaction was pure bewilderment. "What did you just say?" "Of course," I exclaimed, hugging him in sheer delight. But suddenly, reality hit me like a cold wave. "You can't marry her, for God's sake. You're still married to me." "Not for long," he replied, pulling out a pen and swiftly signing the divorce papers. "It's done." "No, this can't be happening," I protested, panic rising within me. "I'm not giving up on this marriage, we're still together." "Wonderful," he said with a smirk. "At the first opportunity, I'll file for divorce myself and leave you with nothing." Emily, trying to diffuse the escalating tension, stepped in. "Ethan, don't make this all about money. I have a good job, and my parents left me a decent inheritance. You can leave everything to her, and we'll be just fine." The air was thick with unresolved emotions and the weight of a choice that would change everything. A storm of rage engulfed me. What about me? We've spent 35 happy years together. The only thing I truly need is him. His presence, not wealth or property. Damn it, Ethan. We've spent so many years building a life together and raising 2 beautiful daughters. I wonder what they will think when they find out their father has decided to leave me for an old flame. Julie, you filed for divorce, and it's clear you've decided I'm no longer your husband. Your intentions are crystal clear. The new guy at work has stolen your heart, and I can only assume you've already fallen for him. I believe our daughters will understand me once I tell them the whole truth. In time, they might even warm up to Emily and their new brother. To be honest, I told you it was just an April Fool's joke. I never intended to file for divorce, and the idea of changing jobs was just a cover. I wanted to do something outrageous, to pull one of my classic stunts and reignite the spark in our marriage, but it seemed like you extinguished that flame, and I couldn't shake the feeling that you only wanted me once someone else showed interest. Emily, give me a moment to grab a few things, Ethan said, trying to collect his thoughts. She headed upstairs to our bedroom, and the atmosphere grew even more tense. Emily broke the silence first. "Mrs. Reynolds, I never meant to hurt you, but Ethan and I share something deep, something that feels destined. You should cherish the years you had with him. I would give anything to have lived those years fully with him," she blurted out, her frustration boiling over. "Instead, the last 40 years have been a nightmare. I love him more than anything, and now you come barging in like a heartless thief. I could just scream." "Threats and desperation won't change anything," Emily responded, her voice steady. "This is our moment, one I've waited for far too long. We deserve a chance at happiness, and I won't let you stand in our way." "What about my happiness?" I replied, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal. "What did I do to deserve this?" "What are you complaining about?" she snapped, her voice sharp as a knife. "If I hadn't found out you were divorcing, I wouldn't have even thought of speaking to him. Are you even listening? It was just a joke, a harmless April Fool's prank." "It's almost funny how pathetic you've become. How can you inflict so much pain on someone you claim to love more than anything? Your cruelty is truly astounding. Honestly, I hope this is the last time our paths cross, but I'm not holding my breath. I'll put all my energy into fighting this sham of a divorce." Ethan walked into the room with bags in his hands, turning to me with a serious expression. I know this might seem sudden, he began, his voice heavy with emotion. But I can't stop thinking about Emily. Those moments of sadness, they were all tied to losing her and our child. Julie, you were very dear to me. I genuinely cared, at least until these last few months. And to be honest, I'm not surprised that you filed for divorce. It was clear you were drifting away, convinced there were better prospects among the men at your office. I had my suspicions about those late-night work meetings, but let's be clear. I promised to be honest throughout this process. Perhaps it would be better if we cut off all contact except through our lawyers, he continued, his tone turning cold. Emily, shall we go see our son now? Of course, darling, she replied, and there was a warmth in her voice that made me stop in my tracks. They shared a kiss that sparked a flash of jealousy in me. I couldn't recall him ever kissing me with such passion. They headed toward their cars, she leading the way and he following behind. So much for my clever April Fool's joke. And then it hit me. What a fool I'd been. Ethan had played me like an April Fool. I burst into laughter, realizing that this time the cunning son of a gun had truly outdone himself. I couldn't help but wonder where he found Emily, or whatever her real name was, who had played her part so convincingly. She was indeed a remarkable actress. I half expected them to return for dinner, laughing over how they had tricked me, but as the hours passed, it became clear they weren't coming back. Damn, they were really committed to this charade. The final blow came when the divorce papers arrived in the mail. This wasn't some elaborate prank. This was the harsh reality of my life. I fought against the divorce, throwing counteroffers around like confetti, but it soon became painfully clear that Ethan, Emily, and their new little family had already built a life together without me. Defeated, I sold the house and moved closer to my daughters, who, to my dismay, welcomed their new stepmother and older brother with open arms. For them, it was a beautiful reunion, a milestone in their lives. And as for me, all I felt was the sting of betrayal, and the sympathy I had so hoped for was nowhere to be found. After our divorce, life for me stayed mostly the same, except for the delightful presence of my grandchildren, who bring moments of joy to the polite family gatherings we still hold together. Yet every April 1st, a shadow crosses my heart, a bittersweet reminder of the chaos that once turned my world upside down. Though in the end, it wasn't entirely my fault. Who could have imagined that reconnecting with a long-lost love and a son we both believed was gone would lead to such a whirlwind of events? We would have divorced eventually anyway, but I certainly sped up the process with my foolish prank. Nowadays, I steer clear of April Fool's jokes. Trust me, you don't want to go down that road. So if you want to avoid the heartbreak of being betrayed again, don't joke with the people you're afraid to lose, my friend.